like to speak about one of my favorite Indian non-dualism teachers, and that is Nisargadatta Maharaj. And he died in 1981. And I have a few friends who sat with him in Mumbai in India. And he was a very colorful character. And quite a few of you know who I'm speaking about. And he wrote that spiritual classic that for many have been has been like a Bible, and it's called "I Am That." And it was he didn't write it, but it was taken. His words were taken and put into this book, basically. How do you say that? Anyway, one of his most famous quotes that I wanted to share with you and go from there is when I look inside and see that I'm nothing, that is wisdom. So that's, emptiness, wisdom. When I look outside and see that I'm everything, that is love. And between these two, my life flows. So he was a proponent of non-duality. He spoke about it, and he was really often steeped in his teachings in more the transcendent and absolute nature, and that was his teaching. He really wanted to help support people to be able to realize their true nature and abide there. And from there, one can see when once you realize what you really are, then you see more clearly what life is, what the world is. And until then, we're seeing falsely, where reality is being veiled by our projections and beliefs about it. So he kept teaching, a proponent for coming back, and he spoke about the I am, dwell in the I am. And I might give another talk on that someday because I find that really, really a powerful teaching, dwelling in the I am. But today, I just wanted to share about this seeing the world and knowing the world as yourself, because that's much of what I teach is the embodiment of this that one realizes. I point to awareness and absolute nature all throughout my work, but I'm really more probably leaning into the embodiment of living what you realize and act and how that moves through life, okay? Because life is needing that kind of conscious action. Okay. And so another quote he said, very interesting, which I totally agree with. And I've touched on previously about being in the world, but not of it, that Christian saying. And he said, what is in the world cannot save the world. It's very similar to the Einstein quote of you can't change something using the same energy that it was created in. So what is in the world cannot save the world. If you really care to help the world, you must step out of it. And so that's what he was about. And that's what he did. I think he was like 33 or 4 when he met his guru in the streets. And I don't think they had very much interaction. He must have been super ripe for the teaching that his guru just probably saw what he was capable of and gave him the teaching to dwell in the I am. And that's what he did for 4 solid years. And then he realized he had a self-realization, and it was so abiding. And then he ended up being able to share that in a powerful way. So what he's saying, what is in the world cannot save the world. And if you really care to help the world, you must step out of it. He's saying this is one of the ways you can step out of it is look at what is looking at oneself, consciousness. Be aware of the consciousness, help wake consciousness up, you know. So it's like, what is it that is noticing and seeing this I? You know that you exist, but what is it that sees that? What is it that knows that? So that's why he says, dwell in the I am. So you got to step out of it. So once you stepped out of it enough, sat it to enough degree, then you can step back in. And the reason I say that is that, some people will consider and think of solely as a teacher of transcendence and absolute, but that's and the absolute reality. But that's not true. That's not really true. That was his offering, just like, if you're a professor that you specialize in something, or you specialize in something in life, a baker, a carpenter, whatever you do, and you become a master at it. And that is your main offering. That doesn't mean that's all that you are about. Well, he saw his offering as being able to bring people repeatedly back to this point of this I am, in order to be able to really help people solidify and stay there and wake up. But so much else of his teaching was about being that. What that once that is realized, I am that too. I am that absolute, and I am all this. When I look inside and see that I'm nothing, that is wisdom. When I look outside and see that I'm everything, that is love. And between these two, he said, my life flows. Between these two, nothing, everything. Two, emptiness and form in Buddhism. Nothing and everything, one complete whole. Because nothing is also the everything. It's just form, formless and form. One great whole, not separate. And that's what non-dualism is really at its core about. It's not at its core about just nothing. A lot of people get confused about that. It's just about being nothing and the world doesn't matter and all that, not really, but the world matters. But you cannot change or care for it in the way that is really useful by being lost in it, right? There's really such an important deliverance that takes place when we remember our true nature. And from there, ask, what does life need or want, right? What does it need or want? One of the most beautiful quotes that I like to share with you in terms of this topic about caring for the world is from also one of his, right? Is this one, which I think is a little less so known. The senseless sorrow of mankind, I would say humankind, the senseless sorrow of humankind becomes your sole concern once you've realized your true nature. It's the senseless sorrow that exists becomes your sole concern. And this viewpoint arises out of a deep and abiding self-realization. And that is like the completion. That's the full circle that becomes your sole concern. And his sole concern for the sorrow of humanity was to be the teacher that he was, to help people rise up and wake up and crack this belief that we are a separate somebody. And he worked really diligently at that, for many years as a teacher. And like I said, it was a colorful character. He wasn't all just like bliss bunny and sweet words. He was like hard hitting and funny and all kinds of ways and loving, right? And also would get frustrated with people being dense and repeating the same questions over and over and over in different ways. How about, but Maharaj, what about this? You say that dwelling in the I am, but what about this? What about this? And this and this and this, these problems. So he was like, okay, here we go again. But back, keep coming back. That was his dharma, and that was his so the way his concern for humankind was to be able to keep dispensing this wisdom and try to help as many people as possible. And we are the recipients of his wonderful words that can really help shake one up and wake one up. I remember reading I Am That, and it was just like, whoa, I was ready for it. I was ripe. I was probably, oh, in my early 30s by the time I got that book. And I was so ready for it. I understood it. Like I've heard some people say that they read it and they didn't get it, and then they picked it up later, and then it's like it was just alive. Well, when I got to it, around to it, and saw and found it, I was just like, whoa! Every page was just it was there was a transmission in the words. Someone had taken down his or what he was saying orally. And it was just so full of transmission. And the reason I'm bringing this all up right now is because I've been really my leaning has been really about the concern of the world in my life and in my teaching. And of course, I'm still working with people in the moment on what is going on within their lives and what's happening to help them be able to give them the right medicine, right? And that might be coming back to presence, coming back to I am, coming back to that which is an awareness of. But then there are other times that my teaching is leaning into how is it working in your life as embodying in your speech and refining in that way. And now the larger concern of the world, because there's more suffering, and the more that one becomes awakened, the more that one becomes attuned to the suffering, and you can feel it on the collective level and sense it. And like he says, the senseless sorrow, senseless because it's created by our belief in being separate and division. It's senseless, right? It's not because a tree falls on you out of the blue and breaks your leg. That's just nature. This is senseless. It's self-created, by our collective consciousness. The senseless sorrow of humankind becomes your sole concern. Isn't that beautiful? It's like giving one full permission to really care, and that's really the right direction. And it's like we have so much support. It's like if that's arising in you, and it's like we don't have to hear it from him or some other beings who are acting in the world that are like Amma, like and people from the past, so many. One of my teacher gurus is Nikroli Baba, just feed people. The God comes in the form of food for the hungry, right? Love, serve, remember, he said. Love, serve, and remember. So remember. So remember, and from there, ask yourself, what does life want me to do? In what way? I'm not saying rah, 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 go and save the world. Not at all. I hope that's not what you're hearing here. It is an arising out of self, self for self. So when self has been realized with a capital S, it cares for itself. It doesn't see itself as separate. So it's like it doesn't see separation. It's like hungry here, suffering there, um, confused and lost in Maya over here. What is life saying is needed in the moment? It could just be presence. It could be silence. It could be just kindness, goodness, right action in some way, some way. And whatever one does for work, it could be in, once you transmit what you are within your life, you transmit it. So I'm really kind of delighted to have found some of these other quotes that I didn't know about. I knew about the main ones that we're mostly aware of. And another one he said, and last one is the mind creates the abyss and the heart crosses it. So he's not just an absolute teacher, transcendent. The mind creates the abyss. The mind goes into delusion and misbelief and is just misbelief, believing in things that are not true. So it creates the abyss. It's this break in reality. It creates this abyss. And how do you cross that abyss? Okay? How do you cross it? The heart crosses it. And Ramana says something similar about how the mind, let the mind, the eyes settle into the heart. let it bloom. The mind has its awakening, right? Awareness, waking up to itself. And the heart has its awakening and its unity consciousness. It knows itself as everything, not abstractly, but intimately in a sensing capacity. You sense into awareness, sense into what we are, not just abstract. So, I think a lot of people have stories about what he was about in their minds, maybe just passed on or just belief or just innocent stories. And sometimes also some people, some teachers that have or students, whomever who have taken on his teaching, they find refuge in the transcendent and then believe that that's what he was advocating. And he's saying, establish yourself there. But from there, the heart is it knows itself as everything here, right? When I look outside and see that I'm everything that is love, and between the two, my life flows. Empty, full, and then let the fullness become activated. Let it flow and let it respond to life. Let it respond, and he says, to sorrow, senseless sorrow. Let it respond. All right, be well. I hope this is in some way interesting, helpful, useful, and maybe activating to give ourselves permission to be able to love, to not only go home and remember and be like, oh, yeah, that I really want to know what I am, but then also permission to be able to be to know ourselves as one great whole, not only with all humankind, but with all life. That's the invitation, and that's the direction that evolution would love for us to go in. Take good care.